The jagged silhouettes of an abandoned, rusting amusement park loom against the neon-lit backdrop of Tokyo, their decaying steel frameworks slicing into the heavy, humid night air. High above the sprawling, pulsing metropolis, on the dizzying ledges of forgotten roller coasters and towering observation wheels, a silent, brutal war for supremacy unfolds. Two women, both fiercely independent, both precisely 22 years old, are locked in an unrelenting, high-stakes battle for absolute control over the city's elite underground syndicate of high-altitude roof runners and structural acrobats. At the absolute pinnacle of this dangerous world reigns Kika. She is the ice-cold queen of the heights, a figure of immaculate, terrifying perfection. Her flawless, straight white hair falls precisely to her shoulders, framing piercing, calculation-heavy steel-gray eyes that miss nothing. Clad head to toe in a sleek, form-fitting black leather jumpsuit that absorbs the ambient neon glow, Kika commands the rooftops with a chilling, clinical discipline. She treats every high-altitude route as an exact mathematical equation, enforcing ironclad rules across the syndicate and harboring an absolute, merciless disdain for hesitation, amateurism, or emotional weakness. Operating as a direct, structural nightmare to Kika's pristine empire is Noemi. Noemi is her exact, chaotic antithesis, a reckless, brilliant stunt climber whose very existence is a deliberate middle finger to Kika's carefully orchestrated hierarchy. 22 years old, Noemi carries the untamed energy of a street-born rebel who treats the city's highest skyscrapers as her personal playground. Her messy, shoulder-length hair features vibrant, tousled blue strands that break loose from a careless ponytail, framing sharp, defiant eyes that burn with a wild, provocative spark. She wears a battered, paint-splattered leather biker jacket, thrown loosely over a brilliant neon sports top that cuts through the dark shadows of the urban skyline. While Kika preserves the syndicate's strict territorial control, Nomi shatters every boundary, routinely cutting through Kika's exclusive security perimeters, stealing high-value contracts, and broadcasting her death-defying stunts just to mock the Queen's authority. For months, since Nomi carved out her territory in the neon-drenched sectors of the city, Kika has subjected her to a relentless, systematic campaign of psychological and physical suppression. Utilizing her absolute authority over the syndicate's high-rise routes and equipment supply lines, Kika tightens the grip daily. She sets subtle, punishing traps on dangerous vertical ascents, deliberately rerouting Noemi into unstable structural zones, cutting off access to prime extraction points, and using her immense psychological dominance to crush the younger climber's spirit. Kika's goal is clear: to break Noemi's unyielding will, strip away her freedom, and force her out of the Tokyo skyline forever. The abandoned, rusting framework of the giant observation wheel rises high above the sprawling, neon-drenched expanse of Tokyo, its colossal steel ribs slicing into the humid night air like the skeleton of a forgotten leviathan. Far below, the endless sea of neon signs, glowing advertisements, and pulsing traffic creates a dizzying grid of electric light, while the high-altitude wind howls through the metal lattice, carrying the faint, rhythmic hum of the metropolis. Deep within this skeletal architectural maze, high above the safe limits of the city streets, the atmosphere is charged with a silent, razor-sharp tension. Late in the night, when the rest of the high-altitude syndicate has retreated to ground level, Kika moves across the rusted structural beams with absolute, predatory silence. Her immaculate, straight white hair is pulled back perfectly, framing her cold, calculation-heavy steel-gray eyes, and her tight, form-fitting black leather jumpsuit absorbs the neon glow reflecting from the city below. She spots Noemi standing out on an exposed horizontal viewing platform that juts out over the terrifying drop, examining a structural anchor point with casual insolence. Noemi's messy, shoulder-length hair features vibrant, tousled blue strands that break loose from a careless ponytail, framing her sharp, defiant eyes. She wears her battered, paint-splattered leather biker jacket, thrown loosely over her neon sports top, looking entirely unbothered by the sheer 1,000-foot drop yawning beneath her boots. Without a sound, Kika closes the distance between them, moving with sudden, terrifying speed. Before Nomi can react, Kika slams into her with calculated force, driving her backward until her spine hits the cold, vertical steel support beam of the platform with a sharp, metallic echo. Kika traps her instantly, planting her hand flat against the cold metal right beside Nomi's head, caging her in a rigid, inescapable barrier. The air between them turns instantly electric, loaded with the friction of their ongoing war for territorial dominance. Kika leans in close, her face inches away from Nomi's. Her piercing, steel-gray eyes burn with a furious, unyielding intensity as her voice drops to a lethal, freezing whisper that vibrates directly against Nomi's lips. Absolute. You actually thought you could bypass my perimeter locks and steal my high-altitude contracts right under my nose? You are entirely out of your depth. To emphasize the absolute weight of her threat, Kika tightens her grip, reaching out with her free hand to wrap her slender, leather-gloved fingers roughly around Noemi's chin. She applies a sudden, sharp, controlling pressure, forcing Noemi's face upward so she has no choice, demanding absolute submission through sheer physical dominance. Noemi does not flinch, not for a single fraction of a second. Instead, a wild, reckless, and entirely fearless grin stretches across Noemi's lips. Her defiant eyes flash with a dangerous, provocative challenge as she tilts her chin further against Kika's punishing grip. Ignoring the lethal threat completely, Nomi shifts her weight, letting her hand brush lightly and deliberately against the back of Kika's wrist, where it presses against the metal beam, feeling the sudden, sharp hitch in the pristine queen's breath. Is that a threat, Kika? Or are you just terrified that I'm about to strip away your precious crown and expose every flaw behind your ironclad rules? Nomi whispers back, her voice low, raspy, and dripping with a mocking, razor-sharp edge. Because for someone who claims to control this entire skyline, you look awfully nervous that someone is finally going to watch you fall. The words hit Kika like a physical shockwave. The absolute control in her steel-gray eyes fractures for a brief, breathless second, her fingers twitching against Nomi's skin as the sheer audacity of the defiance knocks the breath straight out of her lungs. The savage, torrential night storm tears across the sprawling skyline of Tokyo with an unyielding, apocalyptic fury. High above the glittering grid of neon streets, on the exposed, wind-whipped concrete observation deck of a towering skyscraper, a massive tropical downpour strikes with terrifying intensity. Blinding, jagged bolts of fork lightning carve through the bruised purple clouds over the urban sprawl, followed instantly by deafening, chest-rattling claps of thunder that vibrate through the steel and glass framework of the building. A severe, howling gale sweeps across the open heights, bringing horizontal sheets of freezing rain that instantly soak through fabric and chill the air to the bone. There is no shelter, no escape hatch, and no way down. The structural access doors have been blown shut by the immense pressure drop, locking Kika and Noemi together in absolute, isolated confinement on the narrow, slick viewing platform at the edge of a sheer 1,000-foot drop. For weeks, their war has been defined by cold calculation, tactical superiority, and relentless public rivalry. But tonight, beneath the unsparing wrath of the sky, the immense psychological toll of their high-altitude existence collides with the terrifying reality of the storm, and the impenetrable ice armor protecting Kika begins to violently fracture. The total loss of visibility, combined with the claustrophobic fury of the gale force winds, the dizzying abyss yawning just inches from their boots, and the crushing pressure of maintaining absolute perfection over the syndicate hits Kika like a physical blow. Her pristine, untouchable composure evaporates in a single, breathless second. A sharp, ragged gasp tears from her throat as her chest locks up entirely. A severe, paralyzing panic attack grips her mind, a hidden, terrifying vulnerability she has guarded with her life from every rival, boss, and subordinate in the city. Dropping to her knees on the slick, waterlogged concrete, Kika's hands fly to her head with frantic, trembling urgency. With desperate, tearing motions, she rips off her protective climbing gloves, letting her immaculate, straight white hair, usually styled to absolute perfection, unravel completely into a wet, plastered mess across her pale, shivering face. I can't. The control is gone. Everything is slipping away. Kika's voice, usually a weapon of cold, authoritative precision, breaks into a high, frantic, breathless sob. The root is compromised. The entire structure is collapsing. You ruined it all, Nomi. You destroyed the only absolute order I built across this miserable skyline. She curls inward against the cold, wet concrete of the viewing deck, muttering in hysterical half-delirium, accusing Noemi of shattering every single wall of that pristine, counterfeit empire she spent years constructing at the very top of the world. Noemi freezes, her own breath catching in her throat. The sharp, abrasive sarcasm and mocking defiance completely vanish from her mind, replaced by a sudden, fierce jolt of raw instinct. Discarding all pretense of their bitter rooftop warfare, Nomi dashes across the slippery concrete through the blinding sheets of rain. She drops to her knees beside the trembling queen of the heights, her strong, ring-adorned fingers forcefully intercepting Kika's frantic, clawing hands, locking them in a firm, unyielding grip to stop her from hurting herself against the rough ground. "Kika, look at me! Stop!" Nomi commands, her voice dropping all its usual mockery, turning deep, steady, and anchor-like against the deafening roar of the hurricane. Nomi shoves her way closer, wrapping her arms securely around Kika's shivering, locked shoulders and hauling her backward until her spine hits the solid, ice-cold concrete wall of the observation tower. Nomi presses her body firmly against Kika's, acting as a living shield, trapping her within a circle of warmth and unyielding physical presence against the howling wind. "Breathe, Kika. Match my pace. In and out," Nomi whispers directly against her ear, her chest rising and falling in slow, deliberate rhythms. "I've got you. You're not falling. I am right here." For several agonizing minutes, Kika fights against the crushing wave of panic, her fingers digging desperately into the fabric of Nomi's wet leather jacket, trembling violently as the rain lashes down around them. But as Nomi holds her fast, refusing to let go, refusing to judge, offering absolute, unshakable stability at the terrifying edge of the abyss, Kika's frantic gasps begin to slow. Her rigid shoulders drop, and her breathing finally locks into sync with Nomi's steady, rhythmic pulse. In the freezing rain of the high-altitude storm, stripped of leather armor, syndicate titles, and professional masks, the two fierce rivals realize a profound, terrifying truth. Beneath the bitter war for the rooftop empire, they are merely two mirrors, reflecting the exact same exhaustion, holding each other up at the very edge of the world. The private, subterranean maintenance loft of the abandoned amusement park's central observation tower settles into an intense, secluded atmosphere long past midnight, save for the low, vibrating hum of distant city generators and the steady, punishing lash of rain against the tall, iron-grated casement windows high above. Following their harrowing hours stranded together in the freezing high-altitude hurricane and the storm-swept concrete observation decks, the volatile dynamic between Kika and Noemi has shifted irrevocably, from bitter rooftop hostility into something far more dangerous, a destructive, suffocating codependency born of shared friction, absolute vulnerability, and crossed lines. By day, they continue to execute their roles with ruthless precision, patrolling opposite ends of the industrial sector, managing the roof-runner crews with clinical coldness, and trading sharp, venomous glances under the bright neon glow of the billboards. But by night, the gravitational pull draws them back into the shadows of the abandoned complex, where their relentless rivalry explodes into a wild, feral intimacy. Kika stands rigid beside a massive structural steel pillar inside the decaying command loft. Her immaculate, straight white hair is still pulled back into its sleek, tight frame, though a few stray strands cling damply to her flushed temples. Her bespoke, form-fitting black leather jumpsuit is unzipped slightly at the collar, the fabric slightly ruffled, serving as a visible scar of their shattered high-altitude armor and the erosion of her absolute control. Nomi stands opposite her, leaning casually against the edge of a heavy, rusted tool chest, with her scuffed boots crossed and her ring-adorned fingers resting on the metal surface. Her thick, tousled chestnut hair, with vibrant blue strands, falls wildly across her shoulders, and her defiant, amber-flecked eyes glitter with a reckless, mocking challenge. A subtle silver ring catches the pale blue light of the neon Tokyo street lamps, bleeding through the reinforced glass from the wet testing tarmac outside. You missed a critical structural stress point during today's afternoon perimeter check, Kika. Noemi draws out her words, her raspy voice a low provocation cutting through the quiet, echoing workspace. Almost like you're losing your meticulous edge. Or maybe you were simply too distracted, watching me dismantle your favorite syndicate protocols right in front of the crew leads. Kika's piercing, calculation-heavy, steel-gray eyes flare with sudden, incandescent rage. In a fraction of a second, the thin veneer of professional detachment snaps completely. Moving with terrifying, predatory speed, Kika closes the distance between them. She seizes the lapels of Noemi's battered leather motorcycle jacket and shoves her backward with a surge of fierce, desperate strength. She pins Noemi firmly against the heavy glass panel of a large panoramic observation window, caging her in entirely. Kika presses her body flush against Noemi's, trapping her, her hands trembling slightly as she grips the dark fabric. The air in the private loft turns instantly heavy, charged with the controlling friction of two opposing forces colliding at terminal velocity. "You are pushing this far too far, Noemi," Kika breathes out, her voice a low, ragged rasp, vibrating directly against Noemi's lips. Her chest rises and falls rapidly beneath her open collar. "If you keep playing with these boundaries, you're going to destroy us both. This madness will consume everything we've built across this entire skyline, and nothing will be left of either of us." Noemi doesn't flinch. Instead, a wild, reckless, and intoxicating grin stretches across her lips. Her eyes lock onto Kika's with an absolute, fearless abandon, refusing to yield an inch of ground. "Then let us burn," Noemi whispers fiercely, her voice dropping to a low, daring challenge. Without waiting another beat, Noemi surges upward, wrapping her hands around the back of Kika's neck, tangling her fingers straight through her white hair, dragging her down. Kika yields with a sharp, involuntary gasp, crashing her lips down onto Noemi's in a brutal, desperate, and fiercely passionate kiss that obliterates every remaining rule, every syndicate convention, and every vestige of their bitter war in the dark heart of the tower. The magnificent, blindingly illuminated skyline of Tokyo pulses with an electric, deafening energy as millions of online viewers tune into the grand, illegal festival of extreme high-altitude streaming. Giant neon billboards, towering multi-story commercial displays, and sprawling LED screens cast a vibrant synthetic glow over the sprawling urban canyon. The air is thick with the scent of ozone, high-end electronics, and the heavy, intoxicating atmosphere of ultimate underground rebellion. Elite syndicate bosses, corporate fixes, and underground streaming syndicates pack the high-rise VIP lounges, eagerly awaiting the crowning event, where Kika and Noemi are scheduled to face off in a fatal rooftop duel for absolute supremacy over the skyline. High above the main commercial district, sealed behind reinforced soundproof glass in the central syndicate tower, the shadowy founders and financial tycoons of the Roofrunner Syndicate sit in leather armchairs, swirling expensive whiskey with smug, untouchable grins. To them, this live-streamed showdown is the final, flawless chess move, the culmination of years of ruthless control, where their multi-billion-dollar illegal operation will secure absolute dominance, backed by untouchable corporate corruption and hidden offshore accounts. Down on the towering open-air observation deck of the city's highest skyscraper, illuminated by the harsh glare of broadcast drones and mobile reporting units, the two central figures of the festival stand mere feet apart. Kika stands rigid beside the massive master transmitter console. Her immaculate, straight white hair is pulled back into its tight, perfect frame without a single stray strand, and her form-fitting black leather jumpsuit absorbs the neon light. Yet, beneath her cold exterior, her piercing steel-gray eyes burn with a quiet, fierce resolve that has nothing to do with winning a syndicate crown. A few yards away, leaning casually against the edge of the steel railing, stands Noemi. Her thick, tousled chestnut hair, with vibrant blue strands, falls wildly across her shoulders, escaping her ponytail, and her worn black leather motorcycle jacket is thrown loosely over her neon sports top. A subtle silver ring catches the blinding stadium lights as she rests her hand on the auxiliary override deck. Her defiant eyes lock onto Kika's across the concrete, communicating a silent, absolute, and perfectly synchronized understanding. There is no hesitation left between them, only a shared, unyielding rebellion against the cage that bound them. The countdown timer on the massive digital screens above the city ticks down to 0. The streaming feed goes live to tens of millions of concurrent viewers worldwide. The signal switches. Instead of fighting each other for dominance, Kika and Noemi execute their move with breathtaking clockwork precision. Simultaneously, both hackers slam down on their onboard manual override switches, linking their encrypted streaming units directly into the city's central master broadcasting grid and every towering commercial LED jumbotron overlooking the entire metropolis. In a fraction of a second, the planned festival feed vanishes from the giant screens. In its place, massive, high-definition digital archives burst into glaring, undeniable color across the urban skyline. The raw, unedited financial records, offshore shell company accounts, forged syndicate documents, illegal extortion schemes, and documented evidence of systemic corruption orchestrated by the syndicate bosses flood the giant displays for millions of viewers worldwide to see. Encrypted audio logs begin broadcasting simultaneously through the city's powerful acoustic emergency sound systems, capturing the boss's own cold, calculating voices, plotting the elimination of rival crews, the fraudulent embezzlement of underground earnings, and the ruthless cover-up of high-altitude accidents that endangered climbers' lives. A collective, deafening gasp rips through the millions of spectators watching online and crowding the streets below, instantly silencing the festival celebration. Drone cameras and media outlets surge toward the skyscraper, thrusting microphones upward, while the elite bosses and the VIP boxes turn chalk white, screaming in panicked, futile disbelief. Up in the executive suite, the syndicate leaders leap to their feet, their glasses shattering against the floor as their faces drain of color. They slam their fists against the glass, screaming frantic, unheard orders into dead air as their entire criminal empire collapses into absolute ruin in real time before the entire world. Kika stands calmly beside the console, watching the chaos unfold with a cold, liberating smile touching the corners of her lips. Without looking back at the frantically waving security enforcers and syndicate fixers rushing up the stairwells, Nomi leaps away from her deck, sprinting across the concrete toward Kika. "It's time to burn it all down," Nomi calls out over the roar of the panicking city below. Without a second hesitation, Kika grabs the emergency parachute rigs resting against the railing, tossing one to Noemi as they both step right up to the absolute edge of the skyscraper's sheer vertical drop. Securing their harness buckles with swift, practiced precision, they turn to face the dizzying abyss of the neon-drenched Tokyo night. As distant police sirens begin to wail through the narrow streets far below, Kika and Noemi lock eyes one last time, sharing a wild, fearless grin before stepping off the ledge together, plunging headfirst into the open air beneath the rolling thunderclouds. Free-falling through the glowing, neon-drenched canyons of the city, the towering skyscrapers and streetlights blur into continuous streams of gold, red, and electric blue. The wailing sirens echo far below, their strobes painting the wet night in flashing crimson and azure tones. Pulling their ripcords simultaneously, the massive canopies snap open overhead, catching the updrafts of the storm-swept wind and slowing their descent into a smooth, controlled glide above the illuminated skyline. Surrounded by the vast, open expanse of the night air, the pouring rain, and the glittering neon of the city below, Kika pulls her steering toggles tight, guiding her descent directly toward Noemi in midair. As they drift side by side against the backdrop of the towering urban horizon, Kika reaches out, catching Noemi by the lapel of her leather jacket, pulling her close as their safety harnesses swing together. With the city stretching out below them like a sea of burning stars, and the vast, wide-open world waiting ahead, Kika crashes her lips down onto Noemi's in a deep, fierce, and utterly consuming kiss, a final, breathless surrender that obliterates every rule of their past forever, suspended in the open sky above the burning ruins of their old lives.